How you doing, Richard?
I'm good, Douglas. How about you? Great.
I'm all the better for seeing you, actually.
Yeah. This is good. This is a really important day. Up and running with Think Big, Act Now. Really looking forward to this series.
Absolutely, absolutely. We have a fantastic series lined up where we're going to be interviewing or having discussions, conversations with great innovative people within the NHS and private sector that are going to be sharing great stories about how they're bringing innovation to help mitigate, help reduce this backlog that's facing the NHS in around the COVID pandemic. So I'm so looking forward to actually having these conversations.
Yeah, I think it's that whole point about just making tangible what's possible, what's feasible. And I think all the speakers we've got coming up over the series are people who are just doing it on the ground, making it happen day in, day out. And I think it's that practical reality, not the theory, the practical reality that I think will stand out for everybody watching in.
Absolutely. There's going to be energy, there's going to be passion, there's going to be no inertia. These are people who are doers, who are actually doing things now. So it will inspire everybody to take a look at what they actually have and what they can do at the coalface to bring about change. It's not about technical, high-level transformations, but what can you distill that down to tangible, real things to bring that difference?
Yeah. So we've got conversations all through this week, haven't we, to get the program going. Same time, out there live, really short stuff. Every session's 20 minutes with a Q&A afterwards that we want everybody contributing to pose the questions. So today's the first one. We're up and running with Lisa Hollins from NHSX. Who better to have on our very first one? They've done so much at X during COVID, just to pick up ideas, big ideas, many of them, test boundaries and just make them happen. And I don't think we start with anyone better than Lisa. So really looking forward to getting her sort of on board and talking to her.
Excellent. Me too. I'm super excited. And also for anyone tuning in, engage. The Q&A sessions is there for you to ask questions. These people are accessible to you. So that's something that we're bringing, and it's unique to the Think Big Act Now, because you have access to these great innovative people, and they can also share with you their own journey. Yeah.
So shall we go and meet Lisa?
Let's go.
Can we introduce, please, Lisa Hollins from NHSX, who's brought so many innovations into practice over the last 12 months, in particular because of COVID. Lisa, hello and welcome. Absolutely delighted to have you here.
Yes, thank you. And it's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I'm the Director of Innovation at NHSX, and my job is to look at new products or new innovative areas that can really help NHS care. And as you know, I've been in the NHS now. This is my 29th year, mostly delivering services within the NHS. And about 18 months ago, I came to NHSX because I wanted to make sure that the NHS benefited from all the different types of technology that was out there and really support people across the country to make some of the changes that I'd seen locally within my own hospital trust, but I'd seen some phenomenal case studies across the country. And I thought we could work really closely with organisations to share good practice and also, where possible, really support people to implement new technologies. And there's such a large amount of great technology out there. I think our biggest and first step within that journey has been to share the knowledge of what's out there, what people are doing. And this is the question that people ask me often: what things can help, what's out there, and who's implemented these new technologies, just so they can get a sense of where they are useful and where they can implement within their own services. So there's a lot out there to help and support people, and my job is to really identify those new products and see how they can support NHS services.
What sort of things have excited you in the last year? What are the ones you go, that's quite something?
There's a lot that we're all seeing every day, and I think, goodness, that's solved such a knotty problem for the NHS. So I think there's cohorts of big changes. So we've seen a real rise of digital platforms. So platforms hold videos and video content, which you're very familiar with, platforms that enable patients and clinicians to connect. We're seeing platforms that work across regions, that work across clinical networks, that work across a whole organisation that any digital pathway can attach to. And they're really important, because I think some of the traditional ways that we've seen within the NHS of coming to an outpatient appointment, or waiting 3 months or six months for your next outpatient appointment, what we actually need to do is to offer patients more choice within all of those different pathways, and more choice in ways they can connect to their clinicians. And then together, that's been combined with very small consumer grade devices within people's homes. And the best example of this we can see is the pulse oximeters that have been really so instrumental during COVID to identify where patients are deteriorating and enable people to be at home and to be confident that they are well. So we've had a huge range of people supported with virtual wards and pulse oximetry at home. And again, you can put your details into a digital platform and the clinicians can review you. So my own experience, I had COVID over January, and the one thing that gave me lots of confidence was that I knew my oxygen saturation was fine throughout that, and it just stopped a lot of worry and concern. So some of the routine follow-ups that we're used to within heart failure or respiratory conditions, we can now start having those at home. So that's a real change in practice. They also support. They also support people being discharged earlier from hospital, because they're often when you're just recovering. Douglas will know this because he's a clinician by background. Just when you're almost better, and that often that clinicians are just waiting for 1 or 2 results. If that can be done at home with your app, whether it's your temperature, and we're waiting for people's temperature to continue to go down, or other areas, we can make sure people are discharged to their and be in the comfort of their own homes, rather than waiting in hospitals to be discharged.
You mentioned something that was a buzzword for me: the recovery.
Yeah.
The NHS is trying to recover out of the pandemic as a system as itself. And we're trying to encourage innovation. Do you have any words to debunk what we mean by innovation? If you're a humble nurse like me on the ward, I've got a great idea, what message could you give to people at the front end or at the coalface in terms of innovation, and to keep that momentum going in terms of how can they drive through that change?
One of the things I would recommend to people, we have captured some of those ideas that people have, and the initiatives that people have implemented in our digital playbooks. So they're all present on the NHSX website. So if people Google digital playbooks or NHSX, those will come up. And those are a collection. We've grouped them by specialty. So for cardiac services, respiratory services, ophthalmology, dermatology, and musculoskeletal, we've grouped all of the innovations together that health systems and organisations have put in place. So that's a really good way of, within 3 clicks, you can find out what people are doing across the country.
And Lisa, firstly, thank you for mentioning the playbooks. We're proud to be on one of those on our side, or a few of those on our side. But coming back, the way you pitch the stuff about the platforms and the simple devices, and then the answer to Douglas, what struck me was a common theme is empowerment. Have I just picked up on that, or do you think that is a recurrent theme that's really come out during this program?
Yeah, I think that's true, and I think over the pandemic we've had to be more flexible about how do we have big problems, how can we solve those quickly, and what we know in the NHS, there are considerations around technical architecture and governance that we need to undertake, and we need to really fully understand those, make sure the areas such as data governance is all in place, And we've also provided some more information to simplify data governance as well, which has been a real stumbling block for people. And that was another request coming out of the pandemic. And on the NHSX website, there's more information around how we can simplify some of those areas around data governance. And that's important because when I've worked with people in trust, there are often many barriers for people to implement change, and we've got to really start tackling some of those. So the good ideas that people have on the front line, we can make sure are implemented. So we'll be working really closely with national regulators, the new Caldecott Guardian, Nicola, who's a great appointment, and we'll be working very closely with her, the National Information Commissioner, to do all of that work around reducing barriers and how setting in place really a culture within the NHS where ideas can be taken up and acted upon as quickly as possible.
And that's superb. In terms of the whole health economy, as NHS is looking to leverage support from voluntary services, community-based services, is there any innovation that's taking place that's encouraging other sectors that have been marginalized in the whole health panacea?
What we found is that when we're looking at virtual care and video consultations, that some of the organisations that have done amazing work are community trusts. The changes for GP practices, I think, have been quite phenomenal. One of the things around digital platforms is that it gives you the opportunity to work across the whole healthcare economy with your colleagues. So if you do set up a platform, you can work on that. If you're in a community trust, you can have people logging in from the local hospital, and we're getting better about considering social care now as one of the big areas of partnership for the NHS. So it provides a more of a freedom of access to supervising patients remotely, and that's a really good thing because it links in the multidisciplinary team. I think it's worth saying that the pandemic highlighted a whole range of issues and barriers that our colleagues in social care had experienced, and there's a lot of work done at the start of the pandemic around making sure that care homes were connected to a range of healthcare expertise to make sure, rather than sending patients from the care home to hospital, where possible and where it was clinically safe, that we made sure that video consultations were available. There were a whole range of devices, so there's lots of new work in social care around care homes, and that was highlighted as part of the pandemic, and that will continue. There's new products out there which are being tested in care homes, and staff are being supported with a whole range of initiatives.
Excellent. I really like that whole approach of bringing in social care. The prescription-based model, social prescription, all of those measures as well, because we do know that access to data will help tackle the backlog, and getting that data, capturing that data at different places where the patient may be is so vital. So are there any things that stand out that can help really bring, get us back to a manageable backlog, reduce that backlog, and get us back into a situation whereby people are receiving care in the right time frame?
No, absolutely. And there's lots of things that and some are in place or we're in train already, and some we're just starting on. So one of the important things, and it just follows on from what you were saying around connecting people and making sure information is connected, is the Shared Care Records Initiative. So it's really important for if you're a GP in a practice to know when the patient's had hospital care, what has happened to the patients in hospital, what medications have been prescribed, what diagnostics have been completed in a timely way. And if you have a shared care record, you're able to do that. And in a similar way, If you're in a hospital, it's really good to know what's been prescribed in primary care. And this helps reduce a lot of duplication of diagnostics, but also the whole issue of making sure that people are on the right medication, and the range of medication is considered, is absolutely critical, as you will know within your practice, Douglas. So they are really important, and I think the first thing we need to do is make sure that people know of what else is happening to their patients when they're treating them. So shared care records are live in a large part of the country, and were accelerated during the pandemic, and the roadmap to shared care records across the country is now being accelerated. And the next step within that is making sure that people have access from social care, and we start working as a whole health and social care team. And many parts of the country are looking to that in detail and engaging in social care. We're looking at the surgical pathway, because there's a lot of work we can do there. The digital platforms that I talked about previously that really work for patients on long-term conditions, and COVID patients also help patients, surgical patients. So we would like to see over the next 12 months that people most people can have their preoperative assessment online. They don't need to go into to a hospital to do that, and those platforms would support that. But they can also review patients following their surgery. We know there is a shortage of physiotherapists that can review patients after they've had the surgery, and this is a really great way of making sure you have access to advice and guidance as part of your prehabilitation before you go for surgery, and rehabilitation after you go for surgery. So there's lots of great work that's coming up within that area. And then new devices for ENT that have been trialled at UCH and Mid and South Essex hospitals that we're really interested in. And so there's a whole package of elective care products that we're really interested in, and we are working with a number of organisations to support them to test out new pathways, which will be truly digital pathways.
Brilliant. Lisa, I'm conscious of time and keeping us focused on Think Big, Act Now. If you were back into your hospital tomorrow, you've got years of experience. What would you do? What would be the one or two things you just focus on to make things happen now, as it were? What would they be?
Yeah, so what I would advise people is find out what's happening around the country, and we've made it really easy for people. Just log onto the website and find out, and pick areas that you think would be suitable for your organisation and the issues that you come across every day and you're trying to solve. So find out what's happening. Get together with your clinical colleagues just to say, these are good ideas. How can we implement these? And then ask for the support of the leadership at your organisation to implement those. So that's the things that we would recommend in organisations. And if you're still struggling, then get in touch. I mean, we're here to help.
And Lisa, I'd echo that, because actually our relationship started by us just me emailing you and you seeing me and saying, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
And she means, everybody listening, she means it, and she makes it happen. It's very, very simple. It's true. She's not making it up. It's there. Grab it. It's wonderful. It really is. They're really here to support you. So thank you.
In terms of innovation, we know with innovation, it introduces new capabilities. And one of the blockers that we have sometimes in innovation is, particularly if it's coming from a clinical perspective, one new way of working, am I making myself redundant? Is there anything that you could say in around innovation and how it opens up opportunities for different ways of working, and even new industries that can sprout out through this Think Big, Act Now philosophy?
Sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that there's so much demand for healthcare, isn't there? We often feel one of the difficulties of our jobs that we're feeling that sometimes we're scratching the surface, and we know there's much more demand. But we also know that a lot of our jobs perhaps doing some repetitive activities that we could do much more quickly, much more easily. So I think our collective goal should be to try and automate some of those areas that we don't need to do, and concentrate on the areas that we do need to do, and that face-to-face clinical time that patients love so much, offer a wealth of opportunities for patients, and really try and work through our waiting lists as much as possible to offer timely care for patients. So over the next 5 years, what I would like to see is a service where we offer a range of access opportunities to patients. Some of those will be messaging, some of those will be face-to-face appointments, some of those will be care at home, but the pathways themselves change quite phenomenally for patients, and there's a new paradigm where patients know they'll be offered a range of opportunities to get involved in their clinicians. And I'd also like to think that we will make it easier for clinicians to speak to each other, to communicate, to find that data that they need, and to log onto their computers easier, to make all of that easier for clinicians, so they can spend their time doing the worthwhile direct care that they want to do, and patients can connect to them easy. So that's what I'd like to see.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Absolutely amazing that was. Thank you so much. Grateful for your time. And I hope everyone will get in touch and take advantage of the playbooks and all the other things you've listed today for us. But most importantly, thank you for being our very first guest. We're delighted. We're underway.
Yes, absolutely. And good to
meet
meet
you. Act now is rolling. So thank
you. Yeah. Thank you, and good to meet you, Douglas. Thanks, Richard.
Lisa, thank you very much.
All the best, Lisa. Thank you. Good afternoon. Superb. We were just saying, thank you for getting us up and running. Great session. Obviously the digital playbooks, but empowerment, simple devices, earlier discharge. God, you covered it all. Data sharing. Was there anything else you wanted to nail off that in hindsight you think you missed?
I think it was a bit of a race through some of the areas, so I hope it was useful to colleagues who are on the phone. One thing I probably should say is that we do have regular sessions for innovators, and we've got our next one coming up on the 24th of June. I'm just going to see if I can try and post something in the chat where we talk through some of the big changes we're expecting in the NHS, and we've got some big strategies, our data strategies coming out for the NHS, and digital transformation strategy. So we'd like to invite people to have a more detailed discussion on those areas, and the AI strategy if people would like to join us. So I will find a link and pop it in the chat. I think I've put the playbook link in the chat already.
Yeah, and I saw you put that in there to answer a question from Davinia around video conferencing providers. So do you think that nails that one off for her, that question that she put in?
I think so, and maybe Davinia will come back if she has any other questions. It's really important that many clinical teams are using these devices very broadly. So the multidisciplinary team meetings that we're used to, or multidisciplinary consultations, can be done by video consultations. And most digital platforms now, the digital platforms that I spoke about that linked to devices in the home also do those consultations as well. So you've got some options of the standard video consultation, the multidisciplinary video consultation, or those linking to those devices and also seeing some patient results as well. So the options are quite broad now, and hopefully will really support clinical teams to be able to review patients in a more comfortable setting. We know patients are still nervous about coming into hospital, quite understandably, because of infection rates out in the community. So hopefully that's helpful for Davinia.
Thank you very much. That was very helpful. And we also had a question from Kamal Bilal. How can we strike the right balance between assets and capacity?
Yeah, no, a really interesting question. I think one of the things that we've been trying to have a think about over the next 12 months. We want to make sure the energy and the enthusiasm for solving problems through technology maintained. So we've seen a lot of change over the last 12 months. We want to make sure that is maintained, and it will rely on the capacity of people within the NHS to be able to respond to new innovations, to learn more, and to implement them within their own practice. So we need to keep people supported. We need to give them as much information as possible, and probably just recognise a little bit that people are, especially if you've been in a frontline role, people have been tired, they need a break, they need to come back, and we need to give them as much help as possible. So we want to try and tackle some of the fatigue and remove some of those barriers that would use a lot of people's time up in terms of capacity. And then the other part of that question was around assets. The new technologies that we're seeing are actually quite low cost technology. They are they change quite rapidly, and you will all know this very well, Richard and Douglas. And I think we're going to see the biggest changes will be how we communicate much more rapidly, and the old versions of these big servers that we've seen in organisations years ago, that things will be stored in the cloud in future. So I think we'll be moving away from assets to more rapid cycles of innovation in digital technology.
Yeah. And maybe that leads into Jenny's question is, what do you view as the key barriers for patient-centric innovation, implementation, and why?
Yeah.
That feels a very deep question, but off you go.
Yeah, no, and I'm sure Jenny's had quite a bit of experience of implementation just from the how the question has been crafted. So this is a so this is an area where we know patients have very different views. So when I was consulting patients in my last hospital-facing role at King's, we had patients who really preferred face-to-face services and patients who preferred digital services. And I think it was moving towards more digital services. And even the patients who were staunchly preferred some of the more traditional services, we found were quite rapidly moving on. And people's thoughts are moving on because their everyday lives are moving on. We're doing more in everyday life with our phones. We're used to mobile working in a much more rapid way. So I think all the things that are helping, all the changes in society are helping changes in the NHS and having an impact on patients and the way we work. One of the most substantial issues is how we can make, when we implement changes, how we can make those equitable, because we know that people don't access services equally at the moment, and we've seen in the press quite a number of reports that highlight the differences in access that people feel and experience. And with digital services, that will be exactly the same. So we have just started programs of work just to test out some of the things that we all implemented quite rapidly during the pandemic. How is this working for everybody, and how can we make sure that it works? So, and addressing some of those the potential around digital inequalities. And then I think there's probably the usual barriers for patients in getting involved in pieces of work that sometimes are quite long pieces of work. Sometimes they don't see the returns quickly enough, and it takes up a lot of time from patients. So I think we probably need to engage patients in a broader way as possible, and if we have the opportunity for more kind of rapid and fast, quick fire feedback from patients, let's take all of those, because some of the traditional models of engagement have been where patients come to very long workshops, and that's great if you've got the time and you're retired and you don't need to go to work. But I think that we need to really extend the engagement and make it as easy as possible for everybody.
Thank you very much for that, Lisa. Nick Dutnall has a very interesting question in how do we best keep the human element of care, compassion, etc., as we implement more and more of these technologies that enable us, I guess, to connect more remotely, and we can potentially lose that engagement.
Yeah, no, Nick, that's such an important question, and I'll just say a few things about doing it justice. But I think this needs our collective effort, doesn't it, to make sure that compassion is such a critical part of care. And we've all been patients, and when we have been patients, you genuinely need to feel that some people care about the standard of service that they offer you. So one of the things that we have found is that when we are offering digital services, the onboarding of patients is really important, and patients like to start their service with a human face, that somebody can go through the different options and they have a chance to ask all of the questions that they need to ask. So some of the remote care services that I mentioned earlier, absolutely critical that patients are on board. They know where they can go for help if they do need help, as well as having the ease and convenience of some of the digital services. So we need to make sure that patients can get back into the service quickly as well, and we can answer some of the more complex questions. And then I think we need to demonstrate that these types of technology can be more responsive to patients and some of the patients' needs. And just think about moving away from some of the very traditional parts of patient care, where think about the outpatient model, where people come every 3 months or every 6 months, and that's it. No matter if you get ill the day after your 3-month appointment. I mean, it's a very, it's very regimented type of care. Whether we can be more responsive, because I suspect, and I know that a lot of the technologies that we've implemented allow people to contact their clinical team in a much more easier and fluid way, rather than the kind of 3-month cycle that we're used to. So I think we need to continue that more flexible way of communicating, but also just recognise that people do need to have to be able to contact a person when they would like to.
Yeah, and I think that fluidity is the point that actually means that digital can enable a more humane approach, can't it? A more human to human approach than may be possible when you're following the regimented approaches. I think it just gives the whole system more flexibility. We've got to grab it, haven't we, and take advantage of it. That's the challenge almost. Lisa, I'm really conscious of time. We're keeping people now and we've overrun. It flashes by, doesn't it? Absolutely flashes by. I'm just going to say thank you so much for taking time. Thank you for getting Think Big, Act Now underway. Thank you for making it so practical and so real for people. And we're doing this all week. We've got 2 o'clock every day, people who are out there doing this stuff on the ground, talking about what they're doing, how they're doing it. And I hope everybody on this call today can join us tomorrow at 2 o'clock.
Exactly.
For Adele Jones at Torbay and South Devon Trust, the Director of Transformation, what is she actually doing on the ground to make a difference? And for the rest of the week, and bring friends. Please recommend friends to join us. We need your friends to keep this moving.
Absolutely. You ran a very strong first leg, Lisa, and our job is to keep that momentum, that energy going throughout the week, and I'm sure we will. There are interesting conversations that's taking place on the Q&A session on the side as well. So hopefully we'll be able to field some of those questions to you after the show has stopped as well. But no, on behalf of Think Big, Act Now, Richard and the team, thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa, and thank you everyone else.
Thank you very much.
See you tomorrow.
Take care.
Bye. So Douglas, what struck you out of that conversation? What came out for you?
Is how accessible Lisa was.
Yeah, amazing.
How on top of her brief she was. Sometimes when you speak to people in authority, everything is overly scripted, but you felt with Lisa there was the air of sincerity there. She's really passionate about innovation, and she gave lots of nuggets on what practical things can be done. She reassured the services in terms of like being on the front foot of innovation, and expanded the whole innovation conversation outside the boundaries of a physical hospital. By bringing social care into the mix. So I loved it.
Yeah, I think what struck me was, I take your point about the passion for it. She's lived it and breathed it. You can feel her the tangibility of her experience when you're listening to her, which is really interesting. And then coming from another angle, there was, I think a common theme was how much she believes appointments can be taken out of the system. Because right at the beginning, didn't she? She said about patients actually might just want to make contact and say, I don't need to come in any longer because. And how do we make that easier for people that they can just extract themselves? But linked to that is that whole empowerment piece. How do we empower patients to actually care for themselves better at home? And you could see her working that. They were common themes in almost everything she talked about. And I thought that was absolutely fascinating. But
absolutely,
and cut through everything.
Yeah, it cut through everything because she made the distinction that we're all patients. So she's coming from a lived experience as well. Not only she's working for NHSX, she's also looking at this problems and challenges through the lenses of being a patient at some point in time.
Yeah, and
I think that's important.
I loved your question about what's it going to look like 5 years down the road and she started just to sort of, riff a bit about what it might do. And she's got a picture there forming in her mind already.
She was thinking big.
Yeah, she is thinking big, but she equally gave us the granular look. If I was back in the hospital tomorrow, this is what I'd do. And just for those reasons, people should be watching that session with Lisa Hollins when it comes up and we play it live, because it's absolutely superb. It was she was so good.
Yeah, she was good value, and she's certainly inspired me to continue to think big, act now. She's turbocharged my battery pack.
As if you needed that.
No, and exactly. Tune in to think big, act now. We've got lots of exciting and inspirational leaders, digital leaders out there. If you ever felt that you cannot do or deliver on innovation, we've got people that can help you, rise up to your calling. As we said in some of the literature before, the clarion call has sounded. Are you going to rise up to the calling?
Yeah.
I think you're compelled to do something if you know to do better. And some of the solutions are simple. Yeah.
And they were really simple. And I think people can hook into those. And I think what's exciting is that tomorrow we're going to be talking to really on at a trust level. We've got Adele Jones, the Director of Transformation at Torbay and South Devon Trust. And they've been leaders in digital technology now, for years. And we're going to talk to her about reducing appointments and how we can use different tools, particularly the Connect Plus app as part of their transformation progress in 2021. But it is Adele talking about what goes on in a trust. What is a lived experience there of what's going on that we can really draw on? So tomorrow, and Adele will be, I think, just as good. Really looking forward to that one as well.
So am I. Sharing those experiences is what we need. Just keep sharing, keep on sharing, keep on sharing. You're not alone. Sometimes when you work in a trust, you think it's just you and your trust and all the challenges, but there are lots of trusts in this country, all going through similar problems. Some of them have different solutions. It's about bringing that all together and moving forward together as a collective, because again, we're all here to serve the community, our patients, our community, as it was. So no, I look forward to it. It's going to be excellent. You guys tune in and we catch you tomorrow.
Yeah. See you then. Thanks, everyone. Bye.